It is 7:04 p.m. and we will call the December 19th board meeting or workshop to order. And we will start with a pledge of allegiance, although there doesn't seem to be a flag.
It's right behind the
Oh, there it is.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We will start in a typical workshop meeting. We're going to go right into the workshop, and public comments are at the end, not at the beginning. And we will start with a welcome from our principal here at Brookside School, Sandra Favors.
Thank you. So thank you, everyone. I'll do it sideways so that I could address as many people as possible. So welcome, Dr. Adamowski, Board Chair Mike Barbas, and all the other members of the board, new and some that I've met before. So welcome to Brookside. In the last 3 years, Brookside has experienced a renaissance of sorts. It's no coincidence that that's when I came to Brookside. So we have successfully implemented a tiered instructional model, as most of the district has, but we've actually significantly reduced our students that fall below benchmark, and we've actually exceeded the district's average growth rate, which is something that we celebrate often. We've also partnered with Norwalk Grows to develop a unique program where students engage in learning about gardening, nutrition, and recycling. Through this partnership and in collaboration with Whitson's, we successfully executed a breakfast in the classroom program. And this program has gotten me so much traction, I had no idea that it was going to go as far as it did. But we actually increased the average number of students having breakfast from 40 to about 140 a day. So what has that done for us? We were instrumental in securing a $52,000 grant from the School Superintendents Association to roll out this program on a wider level across the district. So it's essentially changed the way that we look at the way we feed our students. So Brookside continues to evolve. This year we added a very controversial library media specialist to our community. We're leading the path to increasing our efforts to provide a 21st century education to our learners. So being innovative is what I think has resulted in our good results. So all these initiatives are possible because of the dual accountability between the Brookside staff and our district leadership. We also owe our success to the support of the board members, but mostly our accomplishments are because of the hard work ethic instilled in our students by our parents. I actually have two of them here today. I'd like to introduce Shiloh Adam, my PTO co-chair, who is co-chair extraordinaire. Shiloh's been trying to retire for 3 years, but we won't let her. And Whitney Lee, who is new to our school. She is the other PTO co-chair and also my school governance council co-chair. So without my community behind me, none of the success we have celebrated would be possible. So Whitney, would you like to say a few words? I made her say a few words, so that was a rhetorical question.
Hi, I'm Whitney Lee, like you said, PTO co-chair and head chair in Governance Council. It's my second year for doing the Governance Council, which I really love because I learned a lot about the school. This is my first child who's in school, so I learned about education, how they spend their money, and it feels good to be able to work with Sandra and other teachers for good programs. So I really enjoy being on the Governance Council. That's all.
Yeah, thank you. So I just want to thank you again. I want to thank the board members and Dr. Adamowski and our community for allowing Brookside the honor of having another first, the first of many schools to host future board meetings. And so please feel free to visit our school. You will notice that we have lovely bulletin boards, and you will also see the magic for yourself if you come during the day. That's the best time to come. So thank you and welcome. Thank you. Thank you.
And I think our first topic for the workshop will be on Montessori Education, and I believe Dr. Tim Nean will be our presenter.
And provide the board with just a little bit of background, and particularly for new board members as to why we have this topic tonight. So in our strategic operating plan, goal 5 is to increase the number of high-quality educational choices for parents. And one of the strategies listed under Goal 5 is development of a Montessori program. In a different section, in another section of the plan, we speak to the desire to improve early childhood education, the effectiveness of early childhood education. And it's really the juncture of those two strategic plan goals that brings us to the activity this year. In the priority implementation steps for the plan, which the board set for in September, and those of you that are experienced board members know this is the product of the summer retreat. We look at the strategic operating plan, we make adjustments, and then we determine what are the specific things we're going to accomplish this year in order to move the plan forward, and what are the outcomes that we're going to achieve in order to do that. One of the implementation steps that was set for this year is a Montessori feasibility study that would determine the location of the new program, the materials that would be needed and district capacity that would be needed to implement it, the training of Montessorians, Montessori educators, and all of that. There's a lot involved in a Montessori education. So we are really kicking that effort off tonight. We're going to be contracting with CREC, the Capital Region Education Council, for the feasibility study. Dr. Tim Nee is the principal on that, and so you'll be seeing more of Tim, but he's here this evening to provide kind of a basic overview of Montessori education. What are the tenets? What are the philosophies? What is it about? What does it attempt to achieve? Why has it been more effective than many other educational methods? We're here at Brookside School tonight in part because we have probably the best early childhood space in the district located in this school. We have 2 rooms, very large rooms, probably almost the size of this room, adjacent to one another and adjacent to a courtyard. Courtyards, by the way, are a requirement of Montessori education. One of the many requirements. So we're going to be looking at this site. Dr. Needs to be looking at this site very carefully, as well as other sites in the district. And sometime in the spring, he will be sharing his report with you, and I'll be sharing recommendations with you in terms of how to proceed. But we will have accomplished at least the feasibility study and a plan that would provide us with direction going forward. Dr. Nee, it's an honor to have you here tonight. Tim Nee is the leading Montessorian in our state. He was the founding principal of the CREC Montessori School in the Learning Corridor in Hartford. When I was in Hartford, he was our consultant in the formation of the Annie Fisher Montessori School. And those 2 schools have gone on to be among the most successful magnet schools in the state of Connecticut, both with very long waiting lists. And the history of public Montessori education in the United States has been a relatively short one. While it began as a suburban phenomenon, private schools, that was never the intention of Maria Montessori, who did her work in the slums of Rome, and I'm sure Tim will touch on that. But in any event, this is as a workshop session. This is a learning session for all of us. I hope the board will ask questions and we'll explore topics with Dr. Nee, and he's going to provide kind of a fundamental overview of the tenets and goals of Montessori education tonight. Tim, it's an honor to have you with us tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Adamowski. It's great to be here. And thank you to our board members for inviting me and to our audience members. My purpose is this evening is really, just as Dr. Adamowski said, provide a brief introduction to Montessori. Obviously, people spend years and years and years training and understanding Montessori. We're going to try to do that in 30 minutes or less. And then also, I'll provide you time with any questions that you might have and answer those questions as best as I can. Board members, you do have a folder in front of you that I'll refer to some of the materials in the folder, but we'll mostly be working right off of this PowerPoint here that is in front of me. And I don't know
if every member of the board can see that. If you can't, feel free to move your chairs.
So this is from the New Yorker. Some of you know the cartoons that are in the New Yorker. This is one of my favorite ones, and if you can't see it very clearly, you can see the school of fish swimming in lots and lots and lots of different directions. And it's a great metaphor for Montessori school, because in a Montessori classroom, you could have 25 kids. Those 25 kids could be doing 25 different things at the same time in the classroom. And as the other fish looking on say, I believe that's a Montessori school. And Montessori schools have gotten great raps, they've gotten bad raps. Some people have good information about Montessori, some people have bad information about Montessori, some people have the myths of Montessori, some people are very well trained in understanding Montessori. So I'm going to take it assuming that we know very little. And I don't do that as an insult to anybody that maybe does know a lot, but I also want to make sure that we're at least on the same playing field as far as basic information. My role right now is I'm the managing director of the Montessori Training Center Northeast, which is the only AMI, which is Association Montessori International Training Center in all of the northeastern part of the United States. The closest other AMI training center in the United States is outside of Baltimore, Loyola. And so we do training. It's an international organization founded by Maria Montessori. Her brother, her son succeeded her, his granddaughter succeeded, and now it's being led by somebody, and our headquarters is in Amsterdam. And we're part of that larger international organization. We'll talk a little bit more about it. My own experience, as Dr. Adamowski said, is I'm the former principal of a public Montessori school in Hartford, Connecticut, but I've also been a principal of other types of public public schools in the state of Connecticut, in both South Windsor and in Region 10. And before that, I was an administrator in Atlanta, and I've taught anywhere from kindergarten through grade 6. So my background is elementary education. I later got into Montessori. I have 2 sons. Both of those kids went to Montessori school for primary classes. And then I've been working particularly with the Montessori Training Center through Capital Region Education Council, which manages the training center. And I'm the former assistant executive director of Capital Region Education Council, but I formally did my TRB in June, so I'm working part-time as the training center and doing this type of work because I believe pretty passionately about public Montessori programs and making sure that Montessori is available to all children, not just to families that can afford the high tuition that's often charged in any private school. Dr. Montessori is from Italy, and she started the Casa dei Bambini, and Dr. Adamowski alluded to this, in a project outside of Rome called San Lorenzo. And it was a housing project, very poor families that lived there. The children in that community were not receiving much of an education, if at all, and they were considered the street kids. They were left to sort of roam the streets during the day and weren't even in schools, many of them. And that's how she started her program. But she really has a medical scientific background. She was one of the first female physicians to graduate from med school in Italy. And she was a very early on activist for women's rights and children's and family rights. So she has a really interesting background if you'd like to learn more about her. But some of the very methods that she discovered through her work in 1907 in San Lorenzo in the Casa dei Bambini is still methods that we use today. So even though the methodology and some of the pedagogy is over 100 years old, some of the same materials are the same materials that we use now in our Montessori classrooms. What is Montessori education? A lot of people know it in lots of different ways. I'm going to just go through some basic tenets of the Montessori program. One of them is that the classroom environment is very important. The prepared environment. We spend a lot of time, and if you've ever been in a Montessori classroom that's a quality Montessori classroom, they're beautiful, beautiful classrooms, and there's a reason for that. We provide lots of choice. Students have a lot of choice in the program. They choose their work. They choose when they're starting, when they're beginning. There's a lot of independence and choice in that. The teacher is more on the guide. We talk about that in other programs with the sage, not being that sage on the stage, not being the center of the classroom. The children are the center of the classroom. They are there to guide the students through the learning process, not just to dump curriculum, not just to dump knowledge and information. They create this environment that is very much in tune with what we've been talking about lately in executive functioning skills. So self-regulation, self-direction, building self-esteem, working with intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Learning through movement and the materials. You'll see a Montessori classroom. There are a lot of materials in the classroom and very purposeful materials. There's uninterrupted work time. We prefer a 2 to 3 hour work cycle in the morning, a 2 to 3 hour work cycle in the afternoon that is not interrupted. So we really look at class schedules, school schedules, and how to provide every classroom that uninterrupted time. And we also, everything has connections. It's a very interconnected curriculum. And social curriculum as well as academic curriculum are interconnected. It's multi-age. So all of our classrooms are developed in multi-age classrooms. We'll talk about it in a minute, but the ones that we'll probably be most concerned about right now, if we're even examining and looking towards any kind of schooling, is looking at primary, which would we consider 3 to 6 year olds, 3 to 6 year olds being traditional preschool through kindergarten. Lower elementary, which is what we would consider traditionally first, second, third grade, all together in the same classroom. And then upper elementary, what we would consider fourth, fifth, and sixth grade all together in the classroom. So 3 to 6 year old primary, 6 to 9 year old lower elementary, 9 to 12 year olds upper elementary. These are some other key components of looking at that multi-age classroom, because the kids learn from each other. You build a community in the classroom. The kids, every year, you're only bringing in about 8, at the most 10 new kids into the classroom, because you have 16 returning children to the classroom. So you really get an opportunity to develop community, not only within that classroom, but in relationships with families and parents, because you're with that family and parent generally for a 3-year cycle. Montessori schools are all over the world. It's an international movement. There are about 4,000 schools across the United States right now, 7,000 schools internationally. Out of those schools, about 350, and this is growing by the moment, 350 public schools, and an additional 200 of those charter public schools. There are different organizations. Anybody can sort of open up a school and call it a Montessori school. There's nobody that can stop them. The Montessori police can't come by and say, you got to close this place down. It's what you really want to take a look at is who's the accrediting body for Montessori schools. And there's 2 major bodies in the United States, the American Montessori Society and the Association Montessori International. We're associated with the Association Montessori International. Crack Montessori Magnet School, which is where I was the former principal. It's located right across from Trinity College in Hartford on the Learning Quarter campus. It's an AMI recognized public school. Then we worked with Hartford Public Schools to open up 2 other, Annie Fisher and Moylan Montessori. And then we assisted with the New Haven Montessori school called Elm City. So currently in the state of Connecticut, there are 4 public Montessori schools. There are several private Montessori schools. AMI is considered to have probably the highest level of standards and rigor in regards to training their teachers and accrediting the schools. And we are an AMI training center. We also have a very robust partnership with the University of Hartford. We've been partnering with them. With our partnership between CREC and the University of Hartford, we actually established a separate state teaching certificate back in 2003. And that allowed us what we call a unique endorsement number 110, which allows teachers with their AMI diploma and a couple other courses to be able to teach in a public Montessori school with a state teaching certificate. That was huge for us in public because it was difficult to get teachers certified and have their AMI diploma and have that Montessori training. So this allows us to do both. So that was a big piece for us. We also now offer a master's program that combines the Montessori training with a master's degree. And just this past year, we received a $4.8 million grant from the James Walton Fund for the Walton Family Foundation to start a bachelor's program. So we started a bachelor's program this year, which incorporates Montessori training directly in a 4-year bachelor's program. And it's also provided a lot of scholarship funding so that we can make sure that we're diversifying economically, racially, ethnically into the bachelor's program so that we're trying to create a larger body of a diverse population of Montessori teachers. We also then were just designated as the Center for Montessori Studies at UH, and we're working right now on a PhD program. So the eventual goal is to have all levels from bachelor's through PhD with the Montessori concentration at the University of Hartford. Some of the things that make it very unique, I touched upon when we were looking at those quotes, but it's a very grounded, foundational program. So you really want to start with those 3-year-olds, 2.5, 3-year-olds, turning 3 by December 31st, January 1st, making sure that you get them at those critical time periods. We started with 3-year-olds, we built to the 4-year-olds, built to the 5-year-olds till you have a full primary, and then we built to the elementary. So it's not one of those kind of programs that all of a sudden you turn the school into Montessori. It's a program that you have to grow, and it has to grow over time because you want kids to have that foundation and then build upon that foundation. It's the uninterrupted work cycles we talked about. The materials are very unique, so when you're looking at Montessori, and this will be part of the feasibility study that Dr. Adamowski referred to, is what are the recommended materials, how much do they cost, how often do you have to replace them. So in the feasibility study, you'll hopefully get a true picture of cost associated with looking at a Montessori program. The role of the adults we talked a little bit about is very different than a lot of what you might see in a primary classroom, preschool through kindergarten kind of classroom. Very seldom do you see large group instruction. It's almost always done one-on-one, small group at the most, and very, very few opportunities for large group. They'll come together for story or a song, but for the most part, it's individualized at the primary. At the elementary, same thing. Very little, if any, large group instruction. Remember, you got 3 age groups in that classroom, so the curriculum and the design of that program for those kids is very individualized. And at the elementary, you'll see small work groups because the elementary child likes to work with each other, whereas the primary child, 3-year-olds they might be parallel and right next to each other, but they tend to like to work on their own. And that's why developmentally the programs are designed that way for them. The prepared environment, again, one has to see beautiful Montessori classrooms to appreciate them, and the freedoms and the individuality that takes place in that classroom is a critical component. If we're comparing traditional kind of education, and this handout is in your folders from the board members, if you're comparing Montessori and traditional, these are some of the big changes and differences. Of course, in traditional, there's lots of different types of traditional programs, and you have classrooms that may have elements of these other pieces of Montessori tenets in their classrooms too. But in a Montessori classroom, you're really not looking at books as far as workbooks. It's mostly done with the materials. You're really looking at integrated components as opposed to individualized subjects, that classroom multi-age, the student activity, the student workspaces, and the emphasis on process. Certainly we want kids to come out with good products, but the process and the way that one thinks is really, really critical to the Montessori classroom. There's something that we call the planes of development, and I tapped upon that just a little bit a few minutes ago as far as how the young child likes to work individually, the next older child likes to work in small groups generally, and the next older child, if you're in middle school, they love to work in large groups with very purposeful social missions. And so that's a part of how the curriculum was developed. And this was an illustration that Dr. Montessori used to look at what we call the 4 planes of development. When we look at that first plane, we're talking about birth to 6. So what usually happens is an explosion in the first part of that plane. And if you think about it, think about babies and infants and toddlers, 0 to 3. How much really happens during that time period? It's incredible. When else do you learn that kind of language development, that vocabulary building, going from the laying on the blanket to fully running across the room? Lots and lots of development occurs during that first plane. And then it's refined, and these are just some of the things that happen in that. And there are Montessori programs that incorporate birth to 3 programs too. What we're really concentrating on more in the latter part of that first phase is really looking at that 3 to 6-year-old. So you got this rapid growth from birth to 3, and then you have a refinement in the 3 to 6-year-old. Same happens in the 6-9. You got this rapid growth in 6 to 9, and then refinement in the 9 to 12. So it's moving from that, if you want to look at it, from very concrete experiences to abstraction at the elementary level. And so that's really what we're really working on, is the reasoning mind, the powers of imagination, the social being. We feel that all of that develops, though, out of a really strong foundation in this first plane. If these things do not occur well in that first plane, it's very difficult for these things to occur in the second plane, and then consequently in the third plane, which is where we end up having a lot of problems. And if you only have freedom and responsibility kicking in when a kid is an adolescent or a teen, we can't all of a sudden expect when we give those car keys over that the person's going to be responsible. Where does responsibility begin? It begins with the 2.5 and 3-year-old, not with the car keys, but with carrying a glass or using a real knife or walking and making choices in the classroom. Those are the small kind of things that we use at the primary level, so that when kids are making big decisions, when they start getting up here that are life-impacting decisions when they're 12 to 18, they've had good experience with freedom, discipline, and responsibility. And then finally in the fourth plane, and I've actually just come through this myself I have 2 sons, one's 24 and one's 28. And those of you that have experienced children growing up in that kind of time frame, it's amazing how much growth takes place still here in this fourth plane. It took till my oldest son was 28 till I finally found he's more adult. 23, 22, 24, there's a lot still going on, a whole lot going on. And just recently do I feel like my 28 has settled in. He's like probably closer to the man he's probably going to be for most of his life. Where my 23 and 24-year-old, I can see it's still happening. It's still evolving. It's still coming into play. So, and these are some of the things that Dr. Montessori talked about then in that fourth plane. And the other part, this is really supported by a lot of the new brain research too, that you see that there is elasticity in brain development that goes all the way to about 27. Before we used to think it was all puberty or nothing if you didn't hit it, but that has been proven to be wrong as we take a look at middle school and high school programs. The Montessori classroom is a really special place. It's a community of children. It recognizes the adult in the physical environment. The role of the adult we talked about is very different in how they're interacting with kids. We look at larger classrooms. There's a reason for that because of the social community. So we often recommend anywhere from 28 to 35. What we have found is a sweet spot for us in the public sector is around 25 to 28. Because remember, again, you have 3 age groups in there. If you only have 18 kids in there, you're really minimizing the number of kids of that particular age group in that classroom. So you really want to take a look at it, and you're also not looking at the teacher being the deliverer. You're looking at peer interactions, older students working with younger students. That's a very important part of the program. So the room and the materials that are going to be really important for us to talk about during the feasibility study. What is really needed? What kind of square footage is possible? And how are we going to maximize that as we take a look at the program? The development and independence for kids is critical to this process. And then a couple other things that go on. We talked about the social curriculum. Our kids do well academically, but what we really are also concentrating on is how they're getting along, how they interact with each other, what kind of community are they, how do they, one of the pieces that we talk a lot about for early on is grace and courtesy. So how do you move, how do you speak within a friendly community, peaceful community? One of the things we call normalization is a hot topic right now, which is really concentration and engagement. And Montessori has always demonstrated high engagement and high levels of concentration. And some of the work that's out there now with flow really stemmed from a lot of the Montessori work that was done earlier. I'm just going to breeze through these, but we talked about the primary program. And these are some of the, I'll let you just look at that carefully. These are some of the key components of the primary level. The outcomes, we expect a lot from our kids by the time they leave primary. So let's just take, for instance, many of us have moved on to using what do you use here? We use DRA, but we were doing Fontes and Pinnell. If you did that, we were looking with the DRA, we were looking at kids exiting at the kindergarten level, the end of primary, at level 10 to 14. The state requirement's 5. So our kids are leaving at the kindergarten level as basic readers. That's what they're supposed to do, because now when they move into elementary, they're supposed to be able to use their reading, not learn how to read. And so that's so the expectations that you see here are as kids exit kindergarten. Okay, so you're going to see that at a pretty higher level, much higher level than state requirements, maybe district requirements, or Common Core kind of requirements. And that's critical because we're expecting that during what we call sensitive periods, that if you miss these periods, it becomes increasingly harder and harder to get that information synthesized within the child.
Did you, I don't know if you said DRA levels at the end of what period?
At the end of, well, after the 3-year primary classroom.
After the 3
Yeah, so 3 to 6-year-olds. They've been with you for that 3-year period. Our expectation was that they would be exiting between level 10 and level 14.
14 for 6-year-olds.
Correct. That's right.
And the state expectation?
The minimum state expectation right now is 5 using DRA. A lot of districts have switched from DRA to some other reading assessments. So,
But there are, you talked about, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay.
You talked about a level 14 for a 6 or 5-year-old. Mm-hmm. There has to be some kind of comprehension issues that have to do with social development.
Not that we have found. For kids that are exiting at the K level, they're working at the DRA level between, most of them are exiting around 12, I would say, but most of them, our minimum is 10 is what we're looking for, and 14 is about mid-first grade if you're looking at DRAs by grade level. So that's the expectation of when they leave the primary.
And by, okay, so are they... So what would be about when you're leaving the next area?
The next area would be 36 by the time you leave lower elementary.
And the state would probably want about 28?
No, it actually levels off right around there.
Oh, it does.
Yeah, it does. And so that's one of the big differences. So it's a good question. What ends up happening is how they're using that work. We're not expecting them to be tons beyond the state level, although I'll show you some scores and stuff they do, but the expectation here isn't that they're reading 100 times better than kids' expectations, but it's how they're reading, what they're reading, and how they're applying their reading. And that's what's more important at the lower elementary.
Oh, I agree.
Okay, no, and I'm happy to answer any
12
questions.
is impressive for kindergarten.
Pardon?
12 is impressive.
No, it is, but it's impressive in the method of how you get there.
I agree.
And so we're not just cramming reading down kids' throats in kindergarten. I mean, they've gone through a whole progression of language development since they've been 2.5. So but this gives you an example of that. Whoops. And then at the elementary, when we look at an elementary classroom, a couple of the key factors here is what we call cosmic education. And what that means is oftentimes in lower elementary, when we're doing this work, we tend to look at pieces and build to the whole. It's the opposite in the Montessori classroom. We look at the whole and then start sorting out the pieces. So you give the gestalt and then you come back to the pieces. So like for instance, just take something as sample as some social study concept. We often, it's about me in kindergarten. It's about me in my neighborhood in first or second grade. It's about me in Connecticut by the time I get to fourth or fifth. We don't get to the world generally till about high school. And then at that point, we're not necessarily providing that great overview. We do the opposite. We start with the universe and then come back into it. So those are just some examples, but it also trying to show the interconnectedness of science and social studies and language and mathematics and how they all work together in creating the whole picture.
Tim, you're also mentioning to gather these children early on, like 3, and then having the progression as
Yes.
time goes on within a school.
Right. They would be in a primary classroom for 3 years, and hopefully with the same teacher, with the same class. Things happen, and certainly staff changes, but that's the ideal situation. And then they might move. They may not be the same community of children when they hit lower, because you may have some of them split up in different, but then they would be in their lower classroom for 3 years with the same teacher and same assistant, and then the same for the upper elementary.
So that continuity.
Correct.
Continuing.
Right. And so that's we, as an elementary teacher, how much time it took me every year getting to know my kids, getting to know my families, understanding that I'm getting to know about 8 or so new ones. The rest, they know me, they know my classroom. They walk right in on day one. If you start on August 27th, they walk in, they're getting work off the shelf. You're not spending any orientation time with them. You're spending time with the new 2.5 and 3-year-olds.
So the huge part also, other than the academics, is the social part.
The social part's critical. And let me just slide through here because I know we're running out of time. This is the cosmic education that I was talking about, and it just shows you all the interconnectedness. But and then there is a final phase that we're not going to necessarily talk too much about, but it's middle school at the Erdkinder level. There is a document inside your folder called The Essential Elements of the Public Sector. This is what we would be looking at in your feasibility study. How can you meet these basic components in order to run a quality Montessori school? So that's inside your folders there for you. But I've included some test scores here to take a look at. Our goal here is that kids are really high achievers, that they're doing really, really well. But the social aspect is critical as well. And so we look at it, we want them to be comparable. So this was like looking at Craig Montessori Magnet School compared to some of the wealthier school districts that surround us at Craig in Hartford, and then also in what is the scoring in regular Hartford. So just is to share some, we have lots of data for lots of different things, DRAs, SBAC, whatever we want. But these, I just thought, what I like about this one was how it compared some of the wealthier communities in the area with the Hartford school. But one of the things that you might want to take a look at, and I think is probably the most exciting right now, was a 5-year longitudinal study that we just finished with the University of Virginia. And it was a 5-year study where we took the lottery process and in looking at magnet schools in the greater Hartford area, kids that got in through the lottery into Craig Montessori Magnet School or Annie Fisher Montessori School, and kids that applied to get in but did not, and studied and followed them for 5 years. And the study just got released in November. And not going to jump to all kind of conclusions, but basically achievement was really good, but the gap, the big study piece, was the economic gap closed for the kids that were in the Montessori program versus the kids that were not in the Montessori program. So kids that were in the Montessori program were performing about the same level of the economic group that was huge difference of who they were when they started. Not that their economics changed, but who they were, versus kids of that same economic group compared to the same economic groups in the other study. The difference widened and widened and widened. And so I would challenge you to take a look at that study. It's if you just Google Angeline Lillard's study 2017, you'll be able to find it. But she's also the author of this book that I would highly recommend to people called The Science Behind the Genius. And what it does is it takes these basic Montessori concepts that we're talking about and relates it to current brain research and how they're connected to one another. So I think it's a good piece if you're interested in some research that goes along with Montessori.
Did the study have data on second language learners?
It included second language learners, and it identified the number of ELL students in it. It didn't separate them out as far as looking. They were looking more at the socioeconomic group as opposed to ELL.
One final point on this.
Sure.
Was mobility, moving into and out of schools as people move, a problem? And how is that addressed?
Well, it's one of the beauties, for instance, of the Montessori program that there's there's very little to no mobility. So how it was compared in the other control group, I'm not quite sure. I'd have to go back to see how Angeline tracked that and how many of those kids moved from different school to different school. But in the Montessori group, because it's a magnet school, no matter where that kid lived, they could stay in the school. So their neighborhood didn't constitute them having to leave the school. So that's a very quick overview of a lot of basic Montessori components, what it is. In your folders, you have a nice simple brochure about what is Montessori. You also have some description of the bachelor's and master programs and some descriptions of traditional compared to Montessori and what we consider the main key elements of ensuring that a public school is a successful public Montessori school. So thank you for your attention and for your interest.
Questions for Dr. Nee? Go ahead, Bob.
What happens after age 12?
Well, it depends on the district and where we're located. Currently, at age 12 in Hartford, there's not a lot of options for continued Montessori. When we began the program, when Dr. Adamowski and I worked before, we had a pathway that was developed and planned from the primary all the way through high school. And there are programs like that in the United States, but not here in Connecticut right now. There is an adolescent program at the Annie Fisher School that plans to go into early high school. And they use the farm school concept.
So this concept of Erdkinder means out in the farm, right? So the Marie Montessori's concept of that, and Tim, correct me if I get any of this wrong.
Sure.
You know, this is basically an animal husbandry gardening program, very similar to 4-H, right, where students have lots of outdoor activities, and but it's all hands-on for the middle school students. And you know, there are Erdkinders in Cincinnati and Milwaukee, a couple of other.
Dallas.
Those students have been the highest achieving high school students as they go into high school. There have been studies of the effect of Erdkinder.
Yeah, it's particularly in Milwaukee. So, other questions? I saw several hands up. So.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Thanks. It says under assessments to implement state-mandated assessments so that the character of the program isn't compromised. Did you have any trouble with that?
Of course we did.
Okay.
So, but that's where there has to be some decisions at the district level. Fortunately, I worked with superintendents of magnet schools that were very understanding of the Montessori methodology. So our goal was, let us achieve the outcomes, let us be able to show you. If our test scores are terrible, then that's a whole different ballgame. But if our test scores are good, we're doing what you want us to do. How we get there is up to us, if you can live with that. They did. Our test scores were great. So that's where some decisions have to be made, that an assessment across the whole district maybe does not apply here. Okay, and it might not be the same way that we're going to get to it, but it's a struggle, and there has to be good understanding on the Montessori teachers' staff of what the expectations are and what are the state assessment expectations and outcomes, so that they know how to make those connections. And also, what we did was we've created multiple alignment documents that take the Montessori curriculum and materials, align them to the state standards.
Okay, thank you.
Julie?
Thanks, Mike. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts or examples of cases where you've had one or two magnet Montessori schools within a district, if any of those practices, the Montessori model practices, have then seen their way and were scaled up to the other schools within the district.
Not terribly so. The only thing, we have 3 now in Hartford. So there's 3 public Montessori schools in Hartford. 2 run through Hartford Public Schools and 1 run through Capital Region Education Council. So people look at the methodology, particularly at the primary level. So I think some of the elements of choice, and actually if you go to our website, there's a film on there of how you can take some of the basic tenets and apply them to any preschool, kindergarten classroom. Doesn't make it a Montessori classroom, but choice is choice, and freedom and discipline and responsibility should be of every preschool program. So in that regard, there's been some influence, but it hasn't turned the preschool programs completely over or anything like that. What I will say is there is giant wait lists to get into those 3 schools.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Well, yes, just
Yes, Bruce.
To my mind, if we were to go down this road, then I'm assuming the middle school option is on the table.
Well, I would hope so.
Okay.
This is the same issue that we are going to confront earlier with dual language.
Right.
In several years, the Silvermine dual language students will have matriculated through the 5th grade. At that point, according to all of the research, and you can see them on track for this now, those that are in 1st grade going to 2nd, they will be proficient in 2 languages. What do you then do in middle school? Right? Do you have a dual language program in middle school, or do you just abandon this? Or do you try to have a middle school program and then connect it to high school somehow, where a student can go in with their 2nd language somewhere at the level 4 or 5? This is something I've been excited about along with Tim in my entire career, because I've seen the power of it. I've seen the type of student. The Montessori program produces such a well-rounded student. These are students that have a very broad perspective. They're very kind. They're considerate. They're socially adjusted so well as a result of this methodology. And I would hope, and it will probably be different people sitting at this table at that time, but I would hope that this could lead to kinder over time.
Yeah, I agree.
So the progression at this point typically is there's no high school Montessori model. It pretty much ends in 8th grade.
There are several public Montessori high schools as well. Norwalk, Minnesota, St. Paul, Minneapolis, Dallas, Cleveland, Denver. So there's several around. There's currently none in Connecticut.
So Marie Montessori passed away before she could develop the high school level. She passed away at her kinder.
Right. Just really briefly developed her kinder.
But there are Montessori experts that have convened from throughout the world and tried to apply her principles to high school. Right. What would it look like? But again, it's a secondary application. It's not part of the original design.
And some have blended that also with an IB type of methodology and mentality as well.
Great. Any other questions from the board? Okay, well, thank you for coming down, and thank you for teaching us so much.
So you will be seeing more of Tim in the weeks ahead. He's going to be visiting a number of schools. Our hope is, and Tim, I think there was a question I did want you to address. And I know this has changed during the time I was involved in it. How long does it now take in terms of our own staff? I've been contacted by a number of teachers who are very interested in this, who are interested in becoming certified Montessorians. How long does that take now, and what is the venue for it?
Yeah. Okay, great. That's a great question. And some of that is in those folders and brochures. But there's 3 entryways. You can enter as just getting your AMI diploma. You can enter as getting your AMI diploma with a bachelor's and getting your AMI diploma with a master's. But the training itself, if you're just looking at the Montessori training, it's generally done in 2 different ways. Either 3 summers, 3 full summers, full-time, 8:30 to 4:30 every day for 5 days a week, mid-June to the beginning of August, or academic. We do a full-time academic year program too, and it takes full-time 4 days a week from September through the end of May. What we started last year was a 2-year part-time academic. So our students are coming, they're able then to work, so they're coming on Tuesday and Thursday evenings and Saturdays for 2 years. So that's another method that we're looking at. But it's either generally you can think of it as a 3-year full-time, a 3-summer program, or a full-year academic full-time program.
And I remember at that time there was a cost to the district of around $10,000 to $12,000. What is that now?
It's now about $12,000 to $14,000 per teacher for the training. The one advantage that you have, just to throw it out there, is for the bachelor's, if people were trying to combine their Montessori training with a bachelor's, we have substantial scholarship funds available for that. And that's included in the University of Hartford tuition. You don't pay extra for the training.
And you'll be producing graduates.
Yes.
So
the goal is that we will have 120 in that program. Our goal right now is 20 per year, then 30 starting next year. And the grant will pay for their scholarship for the full 4 years.
So I'm asking this question for the benefit of the board, because what this may involve for us is hiring a certified Montessorian for the first class, the first primary class, while we enroll a cohort of our existing certified teachers who obviously want to do this and are enthusiastic about it in a 2-year or 1-year training program.
And just to throw it out to you too, while you're talking about that, is we only have a couple trainers. They're very rare in the world. So we have a couple trainers in Hartford. And so once they start a 3-summer training, there's not another one that doesn't start for another 3 years afterwards. So for primary, we actually start a new one in June of 2018. For elementary, we don't start a new one until June of 2019 for the summer.
Right. So you can see the need for a feasibility study and this type of planning that would be required.
And one more question just for residents here. We do have a local Montessori school private, which I believe is the American certified in Wilton.
Yes.
And it was through 6th grade. And then they had a middle school, which I believe has closed.
It has closed. Yeah. The Montessori School will. And they several people, we trained many of the teachers that are in that building. But they made a decision probably about 2 years ago, they started phasing it out, and it's not been in existence now for 2 years, the Earth Kinder part of it. But they were going at it more as a private middle school as opposed to a true Earth Kinder.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Sorry. It says in the folder there's an online program for the masters. Is any of the training for teachers who have existing? No.
No. The online part of it is to meet the requirements of the other master courses.
Got it.
The actual AMI training is actual seat time live.
I understand. Thank you.
Thanks again.
Thank you, Tim. I know you have a long drive home, so appreciate your being with us tonight.
Okay, we will now move on to the second topic of our workshop, which is a review of the music curriculum proposal. I know we have several people involved in this here, but I think Dr. Adamowski will put this in context for us.
Yes, I want to, again, for the benefit of the new board members, just say a little bit about the role of the board in curriculum and instruction, right? And this is an area where we have, the former board members and I have tried to evolve the district. In the old days, the Board of Education would adopt a program. They would adopt Journey's Reading. They would adopt Go Math. They would adopt a set of textbooks and think they were adopting curriculum. And that is not curriculum. What you will see from this document, as well as those that have been prepared in reading and math K through 6, is that you have a set of priority standards that people are teaching to. You have a set of units and topics and things that have to be accomplished in terms of teaching. And the issue of materials is really up to the autonomy of the school and the teacher to determine the best materials and the best way to do that. So you might use the Journeys book for some of the units. You might not use it in the same order that it was. Everybody's not going to be on page 26 at Thanksgiving, which is what we were doing. So I think, we've seen the work of the board become more sophisticated in this area. And what I'm trying to point out here is it's your role to approve curriculum, which is why whenever we develop curriculum now, we have a workshop on it, and then we ask you to adopt it once you're comfortable with it. We really want to leave to the domain of the school and the classroom teacher what best materials are there to accomplish any priority standard at any given time. This is the art of teaching. This is what we depend upon skilled teachers for. And again, this should not be one size fits all. Everybody has the same book. Everybody's on the same page on any given day. So we've had some of our wonderful music educators in the Curriculum Institute this year and over the summer, and you're going to hear from Ms. Kelly, who is one of them, along with Mr. Cruller, and you have a copy of the actual document in front of you to guide you.
All right, folks, how you doing? Good. We have about a 15-minute presentation, and then we're going to give you a chance to ask questions, so we're pretty excited to speak with you. With me is Margaret Kelly. Margaret Kelly is our general music teacher at Foxrun Elementary. She's one of the really exceptional curriculum writers. She's been nurturing this process for over 2 years, since she first went to a week-long institute at Fairfield University, which was actually conducted by Rick Sadlin, our consultant, who was one of the first people in the United States ever trained on the new National Core Art Standards, which came out in 2015. And the goal in 2015 was to line up those music standards to the Common Core, both in ELA and math. So we feel like we got a good consultant. We have an excellent team. With me as well as Angela Knight. I'm going to have Angela stand up. Angela teaches chorus and band at Nathan Hale Middle School. She's actually the author of the document that's in your hands. She's made a number of edits to it already. Also with me is Ed Witovich from Nathan Hale, our band director, who's working with us to expand band into 4th and 5th grade. And I'm going to have Margaret introduce some other folks who are coming as well, who are actually on the curriculum writing team.
Yes. And we have Bethany Nubala also from Nathan Hale, and also Marvin School, right? And she's our strings representative for the string department. And we have Joan Skloot, who is elementary music at Marvin School. So we're really happy to have so many people from the music department here at concert time. Thank you, everybody.
Our high school people could not be here tonight. They're all at Poinsettia and Candlelight, but they're very interested in this process. I'm certain you'll see them when the time when this comes up in front of the general board. I want to thank Janine Goss as well. Janine Goss was instrumental in getting this through the curriculum subcommittee, and my predecessor, Michael Connor, for jump-starting this process. So it's been a real team effort. It's not something that happened just last summer. It's actually been going on in Norwalk since 2015. These music teachers, along with 11 others, have met every single professional day over the last 2 years. They spent 2 weeks last summer, and they meet monthly every Monday when they don't have faculty meetings for the last 2 years. So you're looking at a document that was a long time coming. It's our first revision in over 20 years, and the last revision was only to elementary in 2004. So this has been a long time coming.
Yes. So I'm pleased to be able to present to you our curriculum draft. And I want to talk to you a little bit about, well, you heard about some of the process right now. We began with our consultant, Rick Sadlon, and we've been working on the professional days, formed our design team, and then a final group of a summer design team finished it up this year. So I'll go by that quickly because Craig's already talked about it. All right, so a little bit about how the curriculum is organized and where you can find what you need to know and what you would like to know. So on page 4 is our district music philosophy, and it's really a vision statement about what we want the study of music to be for all students in grades K-12 and beyond. It's a general statement. It's not about what anyone's doing in grade 1 or grade 2 or grade 6. This is about what we hope for students for their whole life as a result of the study of music in the Norwalk Public Schools. And then on page 5, you are going to find the Norwalk Public Schools curriculum map, and it's an outline of our music curriculum of what happens within the school day. So if parents want to find out what is offered in the schools, if you look on page 5, you will see all lined up the things that are offered from beginning in elementary school all the way through high school. And then we separated out the extracurricular music activities, so that's an outline of music activities after school hours, and that's on page 6 to show you the many things that are happening both within the school day and after the school day is over here in Norwalk.
So once these documents are finally approved, they will go on our curriculum website, which is live 24 hours a day. We work on it monthly. We have monthly curriculum meetings now. We're constantly updating the documents. Also, every parent in Norwalk will have access to this 24 hours a day, along with world language, ability, math, and social studies, which are already on our website.
And a little bit again about how this is organized. You're going to find a table of contents in the music curriculum, and beginning first with our general music curriculum on pages 7 to 21, you will find elementary, pre-K through 5, middle school, 6th grade through 8th grade, and high school, 9th through 12th grade. And again, the choral music curriculum, pages 22 to 34, and that will be for middle school and high school, beginning in 6th grade and ending in 12th grade. And then strings and orchestra music, you will find that on pages 35 to 48, elementary, 3rd to 5th grade, middle school, 6 to 8, high school, 9 to 12, and then another separate area for our band curriculum, and that begins in middle school, grade 6, and ends in high school, grade 12. So it's separated, so if a parent has a child in middle school only, they can go directly to one of the middle school areas, and they don't have to be thumbing around trying to find what they need. And there you will find all the different standards and the things that we expect that we will be teaching. And in every section, there's another layer of organization, and we have a program overview. And again, this is designed for a parent or someone going online that wants to know more about what their child might be studying in the string program or the band program or high school chorus. And they can read what the expectations are, some of the things that they will be doing. And also there are national core art music standards under the headings of creating, performing, and responding for every single section of the curriculum, pre-K through 12. All of these expectations are lined up. And yes?
This is perhaps the most important slide because the document has continuity from pre-K all the way through 12th grade. This format was given to us by the National Center for Music Education, and it's nationally recognized. Every single document from kindergarten through 12th grade looks exactly the same. Every grade or class starts with an overview. It has 3 parts: creating, performing, responding, and then there's a nod to the Common Core where it lists enduring questions, interdisciplinary connections, and essential questions for every item. So if a parent has a child in 4th grade, they will be able to understand the document all the way through high school.
So a little bit about what these 3 areas are, because this might be new for some of you. We have creating, performing, responding, and connecting. And in creating, it talks about a child improvising and composing. So that improvising, that will be mostly what's going on at the elementary level. And as students gain skills and knowledge in music, they should be able to compose something on their own. And then we have performing, which we're well accustomed to in Norwalk. Parents come to our concerts all the time, so presenting prepared music for peers, teachers, and guests, and of course, a big part of what we do. And then responding and connecting, and this is again now tied more with Common Core, critical listening with intent, really understanding what your music is all about, understanding how it is put together and not having the teacher feed you that information, to be able to look at that by the time you're in high school and understand what you're looking at and be able to read it. So what are all these things? So an enduring understanding is a big idea. It has lasting value beyond the classroom and is transferable to new situations. It describes what a student should understand about a topic. An enduring understanding is abstract in nature and requires exploration of a topic through inquiry and discussion. So I picked out a few examples from the curriculum for you to look at of an enduring understanding. So under choral music and creating, grades 6 to 8, musicians evaluate and refine their work through openness to new ideas, persistence, that would be the practice piece, and the application of appropriate criteria. And for high school band performing, musicians prepare for performance by methodically rehearsing, evaluating, and refining technical skills over time through planned practice, feedback, reflection, and collaboration. So we want the students to be involved with this after the teacher has offered what they feel the students should do. They want to hear from the students about what they know they should do to improve their performance and work well as a group. And then essential questions. And again, questions that require students to think, inquire, discuss, weigh evidence, support their ideas, and justify answers. Questions that lead students to connect with prior learning and personal experiences and create opportunities to transfer your knowledge to other situations and subjects. Questions that sometimes do not have one right answer. So an example of an essential question from our elementary curriculum: how do we judge the quality of musical works and performances? And that could be as simple as an assembly comes into the school and a concert is given and students have the opportunity with the music teacher afterwards to discuss what they thought of the program, why they liked it or didn't like it, and what they thought of the quality of the music. So we're trying to train their ears and get them to be a better audience. How do we make meaningful connections to the arts and other disciplines, contexts, and daily life through music? So again, all these connections, trying to get them to see the music in relation to their everyday life and other subjects that they're studying during the school day. And then process components. This is really the doing of music, the higher order thinking skills required for our learning process. So we have creating, and under that we have imagine, plan, make, evaluate, and refine, explore, express, and present. Performing, select, analyze, interpret, rehearse, evaluate, and refine, and present. And responding and connecting, select, listen, analyze, identify, interpret, evaluate, describe, compare and contrast, synthesize, and connect. So what we've done, really what's happened is that we're putting down on paper all the many things that music teachers have done for years in preparing students and help them prepare to be good musicians and thoughtful musicians. And now, because of the work of the National Association of Music Education and all the new core standards, we have this out in writing for people to look at to understand better. Oh, sure, I'm sorry.
If you were to look at some of these words on Bloom's taxonomy or Webb's depth of knowledge, they're very high level. These are level 4, level 5, level 6 words. So music education in Norwalk isn't just about the student mimicking or parroting the beat, the melody, or the sound. It's really about analyzing, interpreting, evaluating. These are very high level skills for our students in any class.
So a little more about our National Core Arts Standards and our development process of our curriculum. Our goal was to create a cohesive and unified pre-K to 12 music curriculum using the National Core Arts Standards. And the standards are vertically aligned in the curriculum, so a logical sequence of achievement can be traced from grades pre-K to 12. And we took a backwards by design approach, discussing first what we wanted students to know by the end of grade 12, grade 8, and grade 5. So part of our department work at our professional development days was walking around and talking to each other about, well, people in middle school, what would you like the 5th graders to be able to do when they come to you? Same thing from 8th grade into high school. So I picked a portion of the curriculum and put this together for you so that you could see what happens in the progression from a grade 3 string student who starts being able to only play a D major scale at a steady tempo, all the way up to the advanced high school student who now performs from memory major scales in 3 octaves. So that's 24 notes instead of 8 notes. And they have major and minor scales. They have chromatic scales, so it's all so much different by the time they get to high school. So it's a gradual progression of their skills in that area.
So what you see in this slide is the same thing you see in mathematics. Each year in the Common Core, it's not just the quantity of standards that increases, it's the complexity as well. So what a high school student is expected to do in music is far more broad in terms of amount, but also in the depth as well. So it's increasingly very similar to Common Core math.
And as you go through, I'm sure you've found many words that might not be familiar to you with the music terminology. So we do have a glossary on page 64 to 67, and you can look things up. Here's a few examples of things that came up. For example, and I had a parent ask me about this, a partner song at elementary. They wanted to know what that really was. So I was explaining that it's 2 different songs which can be sung simultaneously. Example, the old Native American one, My Paddle's Keen and Bright, connected with Land of the Silver Birch, things that you may have all sung in school at one point. And then something a little more complex that you might find at the secondary level about timbre, and it returns to tone color of an instrument, describing the unique sound qualities that make it playing a trumpet and a violin playing the same pitch sound much different from each other. And it can refer to different sound qualities created on an instrument, for example, using a mute on a brass instrument or playing a note on a different string on a string instrument. So we're getting now into a much higher level of discussion as we progress.
So Janine and I have to throw a shameless plug out here for the music department. We're going to steal this glossary idea. This is really a complete curriculum soup to nuts. We've never seen a document that actually included a glossary. We may actually retrofit this back to our math and ELA documents. It's a great move on the part of the music department. A parent can really understand every aspect of the curriculum. It's a self-contained, one-stop shopping document.
And then this is something that we included also, and it's called the Opportunity to Learn Standards, and these come directly from the National Association in Music Education. And this was updated in 2015, and it identifies resources that need to be in place so that teachers and schools can give students a meaningful chance to achieve at the level spelled out in the core music standards for all grades and content areas. And the standards are in the following area: curriculum and scheduling, staffing, materials and equipment, and facilities.
This OTL is something we talk about frequently at the Middle School Redesign Committee, this opportunity to learn. We believe strongly that it's more than just a curriculum. You have to have a good schedule that allows the music lessons to take place. You have to have high quality staff, and of course you have to make those expensive instruments available to everyone. So this opportunity to learn is the same exact context when we use it in Middle School Redesign.
And this is the last of the appendix sections that we wanted to talk about. One of them talks about the 2. And again, this is putting out on paper what has been done in schools for many years. But when you're teaching children rhythm, you begin, many people do, with a syllable system, Kodai or ORF in the early grades, and then progress to the number system where you look at the note and count it by number. So many of our elementary teachers are using the Kodai syllables, but in our conversations with our secondary staff, we have found and decided as a department that it would be good by the end of 5th grade if we made sure that all of our 5th grade students, whether they're taking an instrument or not, learn that number counting system so that they're more prepared for their middle school experience. And you see there's an overlap here, and the reason for that is if a 3rd grader goes into a string program, they are automatically going to be counting by numbers when they look at their notes from the very beginning. It's really the only way you can teach an instrument. With us in the elementary general program, we're using it in both in the vocal sense too, so it's different.
So this is probably the second most important slide. Marge and I talked about this individual slide sometimes for an hour today. This is what makes Norwalk great. This is why we have the 2-time national band program in the United States of America, because early on, we're throwing the gauntlet down on beats and measures. Even if a child can't read music, he can still start counting out 4 beats in a measure as early as pre-K. I'm going to defer to my colleagues here in the music department, but this one slide and having the overlapping rhythm symbols and the number systems is really what leads to greatness in middle school and high school band, and this is what makes Norwalk different from other towns. Do you want to comment at all, Angela? Ed? Students in Norwalk come to middle school with an early knowledge of rhythm.
So, and then in the next appendix, there's Tier 3 vocal music vocabulary, and that would be connecting mostly to the high school vocal music program, not the elementary. And then Appendix 4, elements of music, rhythm, harmony, tone, so the basic things of how music is put together. And then finally, another explanation about the enduring understandings and essential questions. So there's lots of things that you can look up and find at the end. So our next steps as a department, we, as you heard before, we've been using professional development days to put the curriculum together. Now we have to begin to implement that curriculum. So we're going to be working by grade level to identify what parts of the curriculum pose the greatest instructional shifts and share strategies to begin incorporating all these new elements into our classroom lessons and rehearsals. And I think for most of us, the biggest instructional shift is probably going to be the creating portion of the document. And particularly, I would say if you are an instructor of a performance ensemble, that it's expected now from our national core arts standards that we're going to give students time to compose something of their own. And it's really a great way to assess student knowledge of what you've been trying to teach them. If they can write it down and present something to you, you know that they understand what you've been trying to teach them. And then we want to develop a section in the curriculum by a link in which elementary, general, vocal, choral, band, and string, we can list all our repertoire and resources for lesson materials and put everything down to assist future new staff with planning, and also ourselves to share lessons that we can all try in each other's school. Collaboration is important for us also. So we'll be sharing successful lesson plans addressing the new areas of the curriculum and add them to the curriculum document to assist current and future music staff, and create, finally, the last step after we've done some of this with the students, create common assessments for each grade level and discipline, add those to the document as well. So when our consultant was working with us, Rick Sadlon, he was showing us how this was done in the Darien curriculum. They have a link, and that's where you find specific lesson units and also the assessments. But that was all, it's all being developed over time and is still ongoing, and that's the nice thing about an online curriculum document, that we can continue to add to it and it can continue to grow.
So I want to applaud the music department. I've never seen a music department that actually was going to have common formative assessments. We do have those for all of our subjects K-5. This summer we'll write them for 6-8, and now we're going to add them in music. So it's a challenge, but we're doing it, and it's working magnificently this year. We have 12 elementary schools or 4 middle schools all taking the same assessments, and ELA math is a major step forward for us, both in accountability and student achievement. So to see that the music department is embracing that is very refreshing to us in the curriculum department. And we are 35 seconds over time.
Sorry.
Time for questions.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay, who's starting?
Yes.
Sarah.
I would just invite any of the music teachers here to feel free to respond to the board's questions, as well as
please.
Our presenters.
Sarah.
First of all, thank you so much. Thank you to the teachers, and thank you. I actually read through the whole curriculum before I got here because this is one of my areas of expertise. I am a musician and a teacher, and I compose also. And it's a wonderful curriculum. It's very thorough and robust. The one thing that I would say is, because an effort was made to name specific classical composers, it's on page 7. Some assured experiences for elementary music include Peter and the Wolf and so forth, that it might make sense, not only because we're such a diverse district, but also because diverse musical experiences have different skills that they scaffold, to include something about exposure to world music, if not specific composers like Carlos Chavez or, Ravi Shankar.
Which I know we are doing, but this was...
Sure, and I know music teachers are doing that anyway,
right,
but just because it was
but to
mentioned
have it on
specifically.
paper would be, I understand completely, yes. Sure.
Excellent job, though. Thank you so much.
Yes.
By the way, these comments and suggestions are very helpful because there will be a revision of this document between workshop and when you're asked to adopt it. And so something like that, we can
That's very easy
adjust
to add.
and add.
Excellent point. Thank you.
Heidi.
So the online, this is fabulous too. This is
Thanks.
really well done and very thorough. So the online version can be tweaked or, I mean, you'll have it on, but if you need to make changes, I mean, once it's a
Yes.
paper document, obviously it's dated as soon as it's printed, but if there's
It's only
changes.
for your packet. Once the
Absolutely.
final copies are approved, it'll be online and editable 24/7,
Okay,
which is what we do monthly with our ELA map up. Just constantly
Okay.
make changes.
no, but it's very, for parents, teachers, I mean, it's just, I was looking through it, being able to go through it, understand it in layman's terms, but also the glossary. I agree, if there's certain language you're not understanding or you're
Right.
confused about, reading through this, I think really helps. My kids were in music, and I think I wish we had something like this, as thorough as this, so this is fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, I have 3 questions. First of all, a lot of work went into this, that's obvious, so thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I can't judge this, but it looks good. But I have 3 questions. 3 questions, and they don't pertain directly to what you talked about. The first is I'll give all 3, and you can answer them any which way. Do we have a fair number of graduates who have been involved in our music department over the years, graduating and going to schools like Curtis Institute, Juilliard, Manhattan School of Music? I'm just curious if we have data on that. Second question, for other art forms other than music, do we have such anything resembling this in terms of comprehensive curriculum from the beginning of school in Norwalk to the end, whether it's drama or painting and drawing?
The art department is working on theirs
And
right
third,
now.
and
Yes.
a third question. This is just something I was thinking about when you presented such a detailed, precise curriculum. Do you find that perhaps philosophically we're approaching music in a way that's, let me make it an extreme question. I'm not sure how to, in a way that may be deemed the opposite of the direction we may be going here with a Montessori school when it comes to curriculum and the implementation of curriculum. This is so precise. This is, let's say, you could use the word perhaps rigid in some respects. Do you think that perhaps is contrary to the prior discussion we've had? I don't know how to answer it. It's something that just I was
Well,
thinking about.
Dr. Adamowski, you answered some of this before because you said we're talking about the teachers having the autonomy to take these standards and that we weren't all going to be on the same page of the same book.
Right,
And
so-
I think that applies very much to the music department.
So I think once
too.
we start following a curriculum, you're right. We have the skill level of the teacher that is interpreting how to achieve a particular objective. But we also have the variable of student need, which the teacher is going to adjust to. So I think those 2 factors, are designed to make this more fluid and flexible and student-centered. Although in this area and every other area, this is a teacher-led process. Now, Montessori is the opposite of that, right? Montessori is, the goal is to develop independent learners, and the student, determines based upon their interests, and the teacher guides them. That's why Montessori is a magnet program, because it's not for everybody, and it should be something that parents choose based upon their perception of their students' need and what they would do best in. When we talk about a reading curriculum, and by the way, where we've developed curriculum, 2 years ago when we started this enterprise, we had no curriculum. We have curriculum now, K-5 in reading and in math, and we have it 6-8 in reading and in math. Our next big focus is going to be science, which is our lowest area of performance district-wide, and for good reason, because we don't have a curriculum, and we have not figured out how to provide experiential science experiences to students, particularly at the elementary level. But that's where we are in terms of curriculum development. Art, the other areas of the arts are yet to come, although there is strong interest in this and people are working on it. Science is going to be important. The social studies, you're going to see also a juxtaposition here between the new high school program of studies that we're going to be recommending in the spring, which is the 26 credit high school program that is designed along the lines of multiple pathways that students can choose. Between that and curriculum that is developed in elementary and middle school.
There are aspects of this, I think, that are going to force us to be more creative.
Of course, of course.
Because we have to, all of us will have to be working on lessons in terms of the creating and responding piece, even more so in order to keep up with the demands of these standards. So that's going to require a lot of creativity on our part and good use of resources to engage students in those kind of good discussions and still have them enjoy it.
Right. Just as one final point, I'm glad what I heard Dr. Adamowski say. It's a lot of us have felt for a number of years that if we could reach this level in our music, why not in every other art form? And then you truly become a magnet district. Then it becomes everybody wants in when you have those kinds of offerings at that level. And I think that should be way up there with some of the more academic subjects, because that's what can make school joyful. Give reasons a kid to go. Give kids a reason to go, and to keep up their grades so that they like in sports. So I think that's a huge step forward, and this is really terrific. Thank you.
Julie.
At the beginning of your presentation, you mentioned something about how the curriculum enables interdisciplinary lessons as well, and I didn't see those specific examples throughout the curriculum. So if you could comment a little bit on how the music curriculum, which I agree, and to reiterate the comments above, it seems very well designed and is very thorough and was easy to read through and absorb, which I appreciate. But how is it interdisciplinary in nature, so that it can be connected to the other core content areas?
That's a great question. In 2015, when the standards first came out, it was the National Association for Music Education. They were called the National Core Arts Standard. And the reason they were put out at that time was to, in a very direct way, make the link to the Common Core standards in math. And two of the biggest areas, actually, Marge talked about, were the enduring understandings and big ideas, and things that are going to linger in those pathways that exist from 3rd grade through 12th grade as well. To answer your question directly, though, at the end of the day, it does depend a large degree on the teachers reaching out and having that collaborative time to meet and make those interdisciplinary connections at the local level at the school. But there's no question that in both the format and the template, the way the standards were designed, and those enduring understandings, that they made a decided link to the Common Core.
Well, when teachers develop our student learning objectives with our administrators in our building, all of us are now required to show one of those links. So for myself, for example, for one of mine in the kindergarten that I was doing, I linked what we were doing in one of the areas where little children have to tell the difference between fast and slow and high and low, just little things like that we take for granted. That is right in the English language arts curriculum, and they even say right there that the students are to move and act out. So I feel that following this up in music for one of my objectives for the year connects directly to what the kindergarten teacher is doing. And I know my other colleagues are doing, I see the nods, yes, the same thing. And we always try to do that in all of our lessons. And when I'm teaching any kind of classical music or world music and we talk about the composer, I always try to make a link with the time period in which the composer lived and what might have gone on in that time in the world too. That's important. I think and again, things that good teachers have been doing for a long time, but it was never exactly written out on paper before until now.
Right.
So,
thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? You know, if I could just make one more point about the importance of curriculum. We have been blessed in Norwalk with a very stable, experienced staff. Okay, so you can get to a point in your career, certainly as as Kelly is, where you know what to do, and you develop this intuitive sense of what to do and how to integrate and how to work with other teachers and so on and so forth. However, a new teacher coming into a school district doesn't have that. They need to follow a curriculum. This is one of the very important reasons why we need a curriculum. Otherwise, people are just they're kind of thrown in the deep end of the pool, and they do the best they can, but it takes years before they can present a program that would be as robust as what you see in the curriculum. So I think one way to look at the curriculum is it's the product of the teaching experience of our best, most experienced teachers. And this is a guide for others as they come into the district in order to maintain that.
Okay.
I want to make one last comment and answer Mr. Kimmel's question. Expanding access to the arts and music is also part of our strategic plan. It's goal 3.8. So we feel like putting music up first is in concert with our strategic
Hey, I'm just saying, since I've been a Norwalk resident, though, music has always come first. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but we've got to be careful. We've got to be really good in everything.
Okay. Well, we covered a lot of ground. It was we learned a lot, and we thank you for taking the time to come here and get us up to speed, and for the rest of the members of the music department to support you. And we look forward to implementing this curriculum.
Thank you all. Hey, Craig, you'll make some revisions reflecting.
Okay.
Well, I think we will now move on to public comments if there are.
We have one more sorry-related item.
Okay.
This is C.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. So this would be a good time to just say a few words about this, because in the budget that I'm recommending to you in January, you will see an expenditure proposed for a pilot of band instrument lessons in grades 4 and 5. And I just wanted to spend a few minutes explaining how we have come to this. As many of you know, we have spent a considerable amount of time on the redesign of our middle schools in order to improve student achievement. Student achievement was the lowest in the middle grades, and there was a precipitous drop between 5th and 6th grade. Historically, that never quite leveled out during the 3-year period of middle school. And as a result of that, we had a significant amount of students going on to high school not prepared to do high school work. In the course of middle school redesign, there were many improvements that could be seen, were envisioned, many of which are being piloted or implemented fully now over the past 2 years of middle school redesign. But it was really at that time that this issue of pullouts for band music lessons became an issue and came to the fore, because we were doing a lot of pullouts for band music instruments, particularly in the 6th grade, where we could least afford to do that. In the process of trying to solve this issue, we have learned a lot. We have learned a lot from our band directors in the middle school. I think we have a much clearer understanding of what they're facing and what they're doing. We have also learned a lot from the experience of other school districts, particularly those that we are competitive with musically, places like Greenwich, Trumbull, and so on. As with most things in education, there is no silver bullet, but there are a series of things that you can do that make any situation better or make it more effective. In this case, flex schedules, lessons before and after school, sectional lessons as opposed to lessons by instrument type. All of these things are helpful in reducing pullouts. But in our case, there is also another factor that probably is the largest factor that we need to address. If you look at the state of instrumentation throughout Connecticut. You find two types of districts. You find those districts that offer no instrument lessons whatsoever because they're poor or they just don't have the community demand and interest in this. And then you find those school districts that do. And among those that do, the gold standard is to offer both strings lessons and band lessons. Now, from a developmental perspective, the norm in Connecticut is to offer strings lessons beginning in 3rd grade, so 3, 4, and 5 in the elementary school, and band lessons in grades 4 and 5. Now, for some reason, we have not, in recent history, offered band lessons in grades 4 and 5. I have talked to some people who say that many, many years ago, in a year that no one remembers, Norwalk did offer band instruments beginning in grade 4. And, that was the subject of some unknown budget cut many years ago when we started doing it in grade 6. However, this is probably the number one factor that compounds the pullouts in middle school. Because the 6th graders, starting off without ever having played an instrument before, they require a lot of lesson time, okay? Now, contrast that to what we're doing in strings now. When we start strings in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, they come into 6th grade, they're playing in a quartet or they're having group lessons, and the amount of pullouts that are required for this are half of what we're dealing with band instruments. We have one of our most outstanding band directors is here with us tonight, Dr. Ed Wachowicz. Ed, can you just wave your hand there so people know who you are? Ed is a graduate of Hart and Juilliard. I heard Juilliard mentioned earlier. He has a very good sense of how to create a system in terms of developing instrumentation in band instruments over time. What we would like to do, given his role at Nathan Hale, is to fund a pilot for the Nathan Hale feeders, the 3 feeder elementary schools. We think we need the equivalent of about 1.5 additional positions to do this. You will note in strings we have a combination of full-time teachers and part-time teachers giving the strings lessons. We'd like to be able to replicate that for the band lessons, but again, developmentally beginning in the 4th grade as opposed to the 3rd grade. And then take a look at the effect on Nathan Hale, particularly with the incoming 6th graders after we do this for a little while. But again, this is the norm. This is the one area in our music program where we are an anomaly. We make up for it thanks to the good work at the middle school. But again, it creates too much pressure, particularly on grade 6 in terms of time for students that are trying to improve in the basic areas of reading and math. When our middle school redesigned, we had more than half of students going into 6th grade not reading at the 6th grade level. So this, we think, is going to help. It's going to help our middle schools in general, but it's also going to help our music program, and it's going to provide an opportunity for students and their families in grades 4 and 5, and we'd like to give it a try. And I would ask for your support of this when you get the budget proposal in January. Heidi?
Yeah, Dr. Adamowski, just so I understand this, we're thinking of piloting a band program, starting band in 4th grade at Nathan Hale Middle School.
No, at the 3 feeders.
I'm sorry, not Nathan Hale, that's middle school. Okay, sorry. Okay, all right, that. And we're thinking of doing that for a year? Are we, half the year?
No, we're thinking of doing it for a year.
Okay, 1 year.
And seeing how it goes.
Okay.
The results of it will not be fully known for 2 years, because the 4th grader becomes the 5th grader, and then they go to middle school. Now, when they go to middle school, they're no longer requiring individual or small group lessons by instrument. They can now be in a sectional lesson or rehearsal, right? And the sectionals are large enough that they can be scheduled into a student's schedule. They don't require being pulled out of another class. So this is what, we're looking at. I think if we're wildly successful and parents just love it, we might consider, adding another one the following year. And the other alternative is to wait to 2 years and to assess and see what is happening.
Right. So Tom gave us a number of 80,000 for next year. So
I think it's closer to 100 because we also, and you might say a word on this, Craig, we also are going to lease instruments so that we have a level playing field and every child, regardless of income, can play an instrument.
So we're looking at fourfold for fully funded.
I think we're looking at somewhere in the area of 100,000.
And then about in 1920, we'd go full district, or we'd need to see 2 years.
No, I think we would, if we did anything in 1920, we would add one school and then look at the results of the Nathan Hale pilot, which are manifest the following year, because it's fourth and it's fifth, so it's 2 years before you see the effect on grade 6. The other thing I would point out here that is disturbing to me, again, we've had several meetings with our band directors at the middle school level, and they've been very, very informative. But we've also looked at the numbers of students that are participating in band instruments in the middle school. And there's a direct correlation. The lowest performing schools have the fewest number of students taking band instruments. And so, PONUS would be a great example of that. I think it has the lowest number of students. It's the lowest performing school overall. The reason why they're not taking an instrument lesson is that they have 2 interventions. They have interventions in reading and math, and there's no time to do it. And so, what you have is students who are in need of an enriched education the most, not being able to participate in the arts. And we think this would impact that situation positively as well. So as good as our music program is, I think we can make it even better. And I think we just have to work on this systematically. The curriculum you saw tonight is a big part of this. But as this curriculum document states, this is also a question of staffing, of scheduling, and providing opportunity to learn.
Sarah, you go first. Do you want to go?
Sure, thanks. Just to clarify, because I often have conversations with parents who have a level of anxiety about anything that's related to change of something that's beloved. In beginning the band instruction in 4th and 5th grade, students who currently are having pull-out lessons, nothing would happen to them. It would be the first generation of students that comes out of the new program that would have the reduced. Okay.
2 years later.
Got it.
Yep, exactly.
Heidi had a question too.
But I think one of the questions that's out there, sorry Heidi, but is for those 4th and 5th grade students, that would result in a pullout for them?
Oh, yes, but the elementary pullouts are relatively easy. You have one teacher, you have the students with you all day long. We do this in strings now. The strings teacher works with the elementary teacher to find the best time to pull out a particular student. If you're going to do it anywhere, the least impact is at the elementary level.
Heidi, sorry.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I think this is a great idea because I know a lot of our neighboring towns have band in 4th and 5th grade. And I don't know why we haven't had in the past. I'm sure budget cuts, things have happened, but starting our kids early, we have it in strings. We need to start doing it in band, and we have a robust program at Norwalk High School, Brian McMahon. So I think as far as our music, we need to continue that. So starting it in 4th grade, I think is really important, really critical.
And, the idea would be every child should be able to have
Absolutely.
to play an instrument.
And they have that in
this
elementary.
is almost like
that.
being bilingual, which is biliteracy is a goal of any good school system. Being able to play an instrument should be a goal.
And it also hinders our students that want to take a band, they want to play band. They have to wait until they're in middle school versus doing it in elementary school.
But if they're low performing, they will not take it even then. Right?
I understand that.
So by doing this in elementary school, they're already started on
But being able to pilot it and see what we can do and how it's working, what isn't working, and then taking it from there. But I think at least starting it in 4th grade would be the starting point.
Okay. Anything else? Nope. Okay. Well, I guess that concludes that discussion. And the next item on the agenda would be public comments, which I don't know if we have any. Has anyone signed up?
There was a sign up over there.
I think I only signed up to let you know I was here.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we do. Oh, she signed up.
You're all set, Mrs. Kelly? So there's one speaker on for tonight. It's Joseph Girantaco. Please come on up. Please state your name and address, 3 minutes.
Good evening, George Anderson, 9 Mott Avenue. Good evening to the members of the Board of Education. I'd simply like to thank you on behalf of the NFT members who were displaced by the tragic fire on 12/14. The care, compassion, and shared with our teachers is exceptional and well received. And thank you for honoring their service and providing understanding while our members face this incredible challenge in their personal lives, especially at the holidays. The second comment for tonight is the new music program in the 4th grade of the Montessori proposal represent what may be interesting and energizing opportunities for our students, families, and teachers. The NFT publicly requests that multiple teachers and the NFT itself be strategically included in the development of these new programs. As we are learning with the problem surfacing with vertical houses and overcrowded middle school classrooms, theories and models are very important, but also so are the individual professional relationships in building these into our individual buildings. The best programs are important. The best programs are those which are guided by models, but are informed by the realities of our students and the building needs. Good programs are developed most effectively through collaboration with people who implement and plan, our certified staff, and our building administrators. Thank you, and happy holidays.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Thanks. Well, I believe that it concludes our agenda, and at 8:48, we're ready for adjournment. Motion to adjourn. Heidi Keys, second, Sarah Lemieux. You all in favor? We're unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Happy